Last night, I was informed of the passing of Rabbi Reifer, Rabbi Avrum, and Tzvi. My mind wandered to my memories of him. Rabbi Reifer was not a person of small words or thoughts. He carried himself with a grace and an elegance. I valued conversing with him. His articulation of ideas, of Torah thoughts were uncommon, Although decades his junior, after a drasha in St. Good Shabbos, Rabbi Reifer showed unusual deference to me in my post as the Rav of the Shul. After a drasha, he would have input, a question, a comment. However, in my interactions with Rabbi Reifer over the last 10 years, what I found was so impressive and uncommon was his passion and appreciation for Torah. He was a person who thought about learning, thought about Torah, pondered it, and sought to understand it. 2 or 3 years after I became the Rav, Rabbi Reifer would daven here for the Yom Nirai, and I forgot why, but Matzah Rosh Hashanah, I had to run to the supermarket to buy something, and I ran in, and he was 100 feet away. He happened to be there also, Matzah Rosh Hashanah, and he called, he put his finger up, and he motioned to me that he wanted to speak to me. And he had a sense of urgency. There was something that he wanted to speak about. What could it be? Matzah Rosh Hashanah. And he challenged me, he asked me a question that he had. I don't remember exactly what it was. The Parsha, on something in learning that had occupied him while he was in Jewel, Matzah Rosh Hashanah. And when he saw me, I was the first person, I was the first interaction that he had that represented a possible answer to his problem. And so he came to me, and that's what he asked me in the middle of Jewel on Matzah Rosh Hashanah. We just read the Parsha of Shemitah and Yovel. Yovel, Rav Hirsch explains, is a word that explains where something or someone returns to its rightful source. A Yovel is a creek, is a canal that brings water to a desired place. That's why Yovel is referred to as the Shav. Shnas HaYovel Hazois Tashuvu Ish El HaChuzosai Lashon Shav Shavas. Because the idea of Shabbos, of Shav, is that the Torah mandates that there's a series of cycles. On Shabbos, the Bria returns to its source. Shabbos, Tshuva, a person returns to his or her source, to the Kisei HaKavod, and Shemitah and Yovel, land, possessions return to their source, to their owners, El HaChuzosai. I feel like Rabbi Reifer, whatever his circulation was, as being an upstanding lawyer, as being a faithful husband, and a role model as a father and a grandfather. But in my interactions with Rabbi Reifer, I felt like he was always returning to his source, which was to be a Jew who understood, who sought to understand Yiddishkeit in a deeper and more profound way. Rabbi Reifer now, Tashuvi Ish El HaChuzosai, Rabbi Reifer now returns to his ultimate source, Tachas Kisei HaKavod. He returns to be able to enjoy a lifetime of accomplishments, El Achuzasai, from his family, from his daughters and sons-in-law, from the Lichtman and Weinfeld families, and the legacy that he has built. And his achuza will be the perpetuation of his life, of his lessons, through the doors that he has built. Bi'u ha'mavas l'netzach u'malka Hashem binu me'al.
The next speaker, with others order, is no need to introduce. My father-in-law, over the years, since the cover was here, is always talking about it, with all leaving away the cover. Cover that.
Come together to give a offering to Avrum Reifer, all of us all. Reifer family has been very close to the title from its inception over 41 years ago. Whenever I met the Avrum to be talking on, that was his time. That was his chashivas in life. That was his nachas. His grandchildren would learn well. They would ask him to kasha, say Luterit. This was his greatest joy. When he could talk and learning, he was a chassid of the Malbim. He said about Malbim. This was chashiv to him. The weeks of Sfira, we are mourning the tira of the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva. They were all lifted during this tkufa for not being noyed covered to Ebezer. They weren't noyed covered to one another. It was a sorry, of course, these were great people. We both redacted with them, Futasara, feed them at the they were lacking in Chashivas HaTorah. During the May Sfira, we always lane Parshat L'Kaisar, one of the Parshas. L'Kaisar Telechu, Rashi says, Amiru B'Torah. On that passage, the Rachaim HaKadosh had 42 pshatim. Those words, L'Kaisar Telechu. And the 42 pshatim that he Machadish came about through an incident that happened in his life, where he heard someone was mevaza at Talmud Chacham. He didn't make the proper machal. The holy Archaim HaKadosh, Chaim Ben Atar, didn't make the proper machal. And for that he was nidva. And he had to go to Golos. This took place during Parshat L'Kaisai. And while he was in Golos, this is when he was Machadish these 42 pshatim, which all had to do with Kavod Torah. What's the Indian? Why 42 pshatim? He felt he needed 42 pshatim to be machapa his shortcoming in Kavod Torah. Perhaps those that learned Daf Yomi, today's Daf Yomi, the Gemara tells us of an incident that happened with the Navi Yeshaya, Navi Elisha. There were 42 young men who were mavaza the kavod of Elisha, and he cursed them, and they all died. And the Gemara says that these 42 young men were punished. What gave Elisha the ability to be makal of them was the koyach of the 42 kabbanas that Balak brought to be makal of Klal Yisrael. He was unsuccessful. They just didn't allow him to be makal of Klal Yisrael. But the koyach of those kabbanas, was still around, and he used those 42 kabbanas to be makal of those 42 young men who were mevaza the kavod Torah of the Navi. The Chaim HaKadosh, perhaps he was nitva for a lack of kavod Torah. He felt he needs 42 pshatim to prevent those 42 kabbanas of Balak, whose koyach was Elisha once used those 42 kabbanas to be makal, those who were mevaza the koyach HaTorah. See, Fiel Madrege felt that he needs those 42 pshatim, to atone his shortcoming. We're talking about an Ish Kadosh. He's Madrege. These those 42 pshatim that all dealt with kavod Torah to atone his shortcoming of not being moicha when there was a bezoyin Torah going on. This is the tkufa. These weeks when we prepare for Matan Torah, where Klal Yisrael demonstrated a tremendous chashivas Torah. They couldn't wait for Matan Torah. If there's a shortcoming, we fail to give the proper kavod to Torah and to those who learn Torah. This is the tkufa when the Eibush is teveya, the kavod Torah. And the Avrum, he was a person who had tremendous chashivas. He had tremendous chashivas for Torah, and he had chashivas for those that learn Torah. And he was Zoiche Baruch Hashem to develop a mishpacha of loimdei Torah, mishpacha of machzikei Torah. Someone who is mechabed Torah, someone who is machshav Torah, is Zoiche to have children who are machshav Torah, who learn Torah. This is the legacy that he leaves. He leaves the mishpacha, he leaves the kehillah. Ubila Mavis Letzach, Moch Hashem Lakim Dimam Yal Kolpan.
Our next speaker, Yeshua Eichenstein, Rusa, blended with my father-in-law, someone who over the years was around and with him all the time. Yeshua Eichenstein.
Zelfs Achem lias gedoi the hosam kwamino One of the Amaroim said, warm up my eulogy because there I'm going to be. It's very difficult for me to say a hesped now, and a beloved friend of mine who I would discuss whenever I had to speak. Simchas or Chalila by Hespedim. But with Avrum, I'll try my best. When the Sfasemis was nifter in the early 1900s, his grandson, the Imre Yemes, was his Malam HaKoimah, gave a hesped and elaborated on the Arichas Yomim he had, how he utilized and how it was Mechadish Toiva, and he did Tzedukah, and it was Miyayetz people. After the hesped, his brother, Hargoin with Moshe Betzalel, came over to the Imre Yemes, his brother, and he asked him, doch nicht gelebt zu lang. You didn't live too long. He only lived to be 56 years old. And the Imre Yemes told him, Emes, but Arichas Yomim he had. A gewaldig Arichas Yomim. Harav Avrum had Arichas Yomim and Arichas Shonim. As was mentioned, they developed together with his Eishes Chayil, Phyllis, so gesund sein stark, a beautiful, beautiful family. As there's a mimer from Phyllis, they could have had more children, but better they couldn't have had. Achzikei Torah, Rosh HaKoil, and Lomdei Torah, and Einetloch, the shameless affairs. There wasn't a simcha in my family which Rabbi Avrum wouldn't come and be meshtatif and speak his hartzik gewerter, his warm words. Besides everything, he was a tremendous orator. I owe so much to him, it's hard to be mekatzer, but I will be mekatzer. He was the one who was mechazik me to write and to write. I'd like to end. Gesher Chaim brings down a very interesting ohora. The word keva, the letters, if you work around with the letters, it comes out to the word boker. Rabbi Avrum, we're leaving now this world, we're coming Bezos Hashem to the world to come. You're going to be greeted by your Zayde and your Baba, Rav Swirsky, and your parents who were so involved in the chinuch in this city. You're going to be greeted by Rav Mendel Kaplan, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha, who meant so much to your life, and you always spoke about him. As was mentioned by the Rosh HaKoil, the Malbim, Chopkin Sofetnish, as the Malbim is going to greet you, the way you used to say over a Malbim, I myself, when I opened up a Chumash, this Shabbos alone, opened up the Chumash with the Malbim, I was hoping what would Avrum will be back to say something on this. The Eibusher will help him. You should be a good debater for your choshev wife, Phyllis, your tired children, daughters, and son-in-laws who are Makayim, the mitzvah from Kibbutz Av, Ve'ein. Unbelievable. And the wonderful, Einiklach and Nir Einiklach, so to Zana Beis Yosher Fazeh, and for our Beis Medrash, who was so involved in it, meant so much to us, and it was a challenge to say up like the more in front of you, so to Zang Beis Yosher for uns alle, and Bila Moves Vanetzach Mokashem Dimikol.
father-in-law and mother-in-law had two daughters. The oldest daughter married someone who has been Kulei Torah and has brought up a family of Kulei Torah. Maybe it was-
A few years ago, I swear, about 2 years ago, Baruch called me over and said that him and the Schwigers is angesund. He came up with an idea. Says, why parents film for my ankle? My mitzvah. What is my film? I was Mechazik him and said, look, you keep your tefillin. If you want, you'll support us by, your parents film for me. Maybe his wishes were actually fulfilled. We say we put on tefillin, that tefillin shel yad shall be next to my heart. Shineged alev, the Shabbos tavis amachshvis nebein alavidasis baruch shemay. While the Rosh Shineged amoyach, shenashamash b'moichi imshar chushav kachaytz kuli mishabadim alavidasis baruch shemay. His wish was fulfilled by not actual tefillin, but the lave and the moyach. He wanted to transmit this over not only to his children and grandchildren, but his Aryan Klak as well. Just recently, that this message of tefillin were given over to his Aryan Klak. Whenever he presented his children, his grandchildren, the Svarim, and the Torah, he helped with tuition, he took pride in our accomplishments. He took pride in us as children. He took pride in what Avrum accomplished in building a shul. And myself, Ron, took pride in what we have done. But above all, tremendous love, which is pure love. The pasuk we was mentioned earlier. There seems to be a conflict in the Rashi in the beginning, whether or not the Chukayse Talech is referring to the Melas B'Torah, like Rashi says. But the second Rashi says, Havi Melas B'Torah, Manas Lishmer L'Kain. It sounds like the main thing is the Kiyama Mitzvahs. Is it the Kiyama Mitzvahs or is it the Melas B'Torah? So could be the pshat is that when Kiyama Mitzvahs come through a Melas B'Torah, it's a whole different level of Kiyama Mitzvahs. When someone looks into the mitzvahs and they look into it and they delve into it, and understand the Medrash Chacham, like Rashi later on tells us, that Kiyam mitzvahs is a whole new level of Kiyam mitzvahs. My Shver uses a melis and understanding that that was a mitzvah. It was when he was 60 years old, my Shver bought him a Sefer Torah. He was questioning some kind of mitzvah Sefer Torah. He didn't write it. He only got it. Every nuance of every mitzvah you looked into, from the diktuk halacha to see how is kind. Put on film, be down early in the morning, 6 o'clock, maybe it's before time for Hanachas Tefillin. The mitzvah is the bracha at the right time, not the right time. And the questions he asked constantly, the same questions of the Gabi, Refuah and Shabbos, everything. He always had questions. It wasn't a melas and tiktuk and mitzvahs, and a melah, the whole mitzvahs, every single mitzvah was with a greater level of shmiras mitzvahs. Another idea of Chukasei Talech, literally, he went with the mitzvahs, he went with the Torah. If he had a minig, there was no budging the minig. There's no such thing as a suda without salt. The shulchan is like mizbeach. You need melech. Melech is there. No melech, no suda. Yeah, Minig used to like Kabbalah Shabbos. So he wrote the difficulties he had in the last years. He came to shul, he stood up like Kabbalah Shabbos. That's what I do. There's no questions asked. He was once asked why you marach yamin. He said, what's his shail? He said, Kol Yomer Parshi Oised Matzibur Marikol Yamav was Bashit. The Chazal say this is true. So that was his alicha. The Torah, the mitzvahs, the minhagim was his alicha, this is essence. And the third idea of melas is just plain on melas, like we heard before. Amal b'Torah, wherever the Rav said, wherever he saw him in Jewel, he's thinking of he saw him at the closing. He's giving you an album. Yeah, he was questioning, probing Pshat. And Mishnayis, Gemara, so nothing was taken for granted. Nothing was taken for granted. He made sure that the words made sense to him. Every word of a Mishnah, of a Chumash, had to make sense, which is probably the reason why he was so inclined to the Malvim that dealt with the depth of the word. Is it Zokar, is it Nekeva, is it past, is it the future, is it the plural, is it Yachid? All of these things meant to him. The memory, he was Nimshach to the Malvim, had to be MS. I owe him a Mechila because I didn't learn that way. We had this understandings of Pshat and learning, we learned of everything. So besides the Mechila, we're not treating him with the right respect. I don't special Mechila. In that sense, I think, look, and words and emes. This very emes that he had in understanding Torah was the same as that permeated his entire life. At essence, he's emes. Midvar Sheker Turchok. He once told me that there was a question whether or not we signed or claimed to rent a rental. This is my word. It's unbreakable. I never go back to my word. His word was unbreakable. Emes. You couldn't do it. He had a shiloh once. He had a nether. They said something to make a nether. He was very nervous about maybe a word that he said could have meant something. Well, chesed, my in-laws have done over the years, they did with chachma. What's with chachma? Whether it's through not charging or closing or charging less, it was done with chachma. Even if you did a deal, made believers that you were his partner, and really you were just doing you a favor. It was all with chachma. Chesed was with chachma. And they've helped so many countless families without any fanfare. That was the hardest thing he had when he got older and not able was the fact he wasn't able to give its check for tzedakah the same way. He used to question that with Tefillah we say on a time is Mishon al Avrum Avinu Har Maria Hu Yanenu. So Mashmar used to ask what was Avrum Avinu's request. He wanted to do with Akedah. He wasn't asking not to do with Akedah. What was the request? Mishon al Bahar Maria Hu Yanenu. What was the request? I don't know if this is the right answer, but maybe the answer is that Avram Avinu wanted to have a request from Kodesh Baruch Hu, all the Mesiras Nefesh, putting in. I should have a kiyum. Here I am in Har Maria. I'm going to pass the test of flying colors. But Kodesh Baruch Hu make sure that my offspring, Klal Yisrael, is going to live with chesed, with emes, with amkos, Mesiras Nefesh. That was my father-in-law. He wanted to make sure that over his children, love for his children, Ne'eneklach, Areneklach, should continue. Mishon al Avram Avinu, Bahar Maria. Bahar Maria referring to Avram Avinu, our Avram Avinu, who was about tefillah on the Beis HaKnesses, and our Maria should be answered for thyroids. And we went back to Kodesh Baruch Hu, that his tefillahs for his wife, for his children, grandchildren, and Klach, should be granted. Continue with there should be a continuing. And we smile al tashtichenu b'fanecha b'ruach kadshecha al tikach mimeni. All this ruach kadshech I put into my life should be go on and on. B'dayrei dayres. Bila mos lanesach amach Hashem al kim dimon al kapanim.
I usually do things off the cuff. but my father-in-law was very makbid on the written word. My father-in-law was born in Chicago, lived his entire life here. He learned from masters in Torah and Skokie that ran from Europe over the time of the Khurban to give over Torah, and when they gave that Torah over at Hebrew Theological College, where he went. That inculcation of Torah and the way to learn it was something that drove him the rest of his life. He used to say he was an attorney by trade, and that was true. But he brought Torah into every situation he was in. I've known my father-in-law for 43 years. There is no one I know who drank the depths of the Malbim like he did. Sparkle in his eye when he heard or said a good word was a light for the entire room. His children, his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren, they would see his face light up. Everyone knew that was his true element. The only thing that drove him besides that was his family. His child, my mother-in-law, was always foremost in his mind. We all heard, we needed this for Bubby. What do you think about this gift for Bubby? What do you think about these flowers for Bubby? The only thing that compared in his mind to that was the lives of his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. He couldn't get enough about them, or be part of each of their lives. They were called his little people. They were his little people. My wife wanted me to mention that when he was growing up, he used to go around collecting money for the schools with his grandfather. And again, it's all part of who he was. The cheshivas for building Torah, the cheshivas for having Torah, was something that was foremost in his mind always. The loss we feel is not that a 90-year-old man was nifter. It's tragic. That's not what we're here for. But the loss of a life that encompassed so much and that was part of our lives, that whole is gone. That is something that we can't get back. It's something that we do mourn. For our next speaker, his brother, Avrum Reifer.
I know him longer than anybody in this room. I just want to bring down 3 Pizganim of Chazal that I think are appropriate. The first one is Ashrei Mishabah, the Khan Tamul Biyado. We're never able to walk in to visit him. And somebody was leaving, usually if they Torah or Abu or whoever it was, they would tell me, your brother told me, don't come back here again unless you have a Bar Torah with you. Preferably a Malbim, as was mentioned. The next Pizgam I would like to bring is Kabei Esavicha B'Simecha, the Rabbi Sachicha Agadol. It's one of the reasons I'm up here, to give my last derech eretz respect to my brother who I adore. He grew up in the golden age of Eifel Torah. He revered Chaim Kreisler Zatzal, Reb Mendel Kaplan Zatzal, Reb Rizal Kaplan Zatzal, Rav Kaganov Zatzal, And the mashgiach, who I was told was only one allowed to daven for the Omen and Mir Yeshiva or Rav Moshe Vernick, that's all. These were the people that he revered and tried to emulate. As a bocher, when I was growing up, I went to school across the street from Mishmilish Torah on the west side. And I would, sometimes when we were left out early, I would go over to the yeshiva, and he would take a dime from his pocket and buy me an ice cream bar. And he was, I remember once he was in Rabbi Rogov's Zatzal Shir. And some 20 years later, when I came back to the yeshiva, and I came into the Beis Medrash, and Rabbi Rogov Zatzal was there, and he said, "Just like a mom, I'll give them by me and shir. Weren't you in my shir at one time?" The last pitzkon that I'd like to bring is called Machabed Torah. Anyone who is Machabed the Torah, Gufa Mechubed al Briyos. He is Mechubed al Briyos. He is given honor by those that he showed honor to the Torah to and to them. Many was a time that I would leave a message on his pillow with a safety pin and tell him that, listen, Avi, I have a bechina tomorrow. If we can get up a little earlier and chazar over it before I got to go to the bechina in the Hebrew Progos School on the west side. And lo and behold, 5 in the morning, he would wake me up, and we'd go into the dining room, and we'd chazar over the Gemara, over the Mishnayos, and I would fasten flying colors. And for that I owe him. We'd spend summers together. He would learn the Yordea. He would study for the bar exam. He and I alone, nobody else. And the ones that, like I said, were mashpia the most in his life was Rav Chaim Kreisler Zatzal, Rav Mendel Kaplan Zatzal, Rav Herzl Kaplan Zatzal, Rav Kaganov Zatzal, and Rav Moshe Vernick Zatzal. These were the people that he tried again to emulate and live with. And he still, Ayom Hazeh, he has a picture of Rav Mendel Kaplan in the front room in his house that you can't miss when you walk in. And there's a ma'aseh that's brought down in Rav Mendel Kaplan's book by Art Scroll. That he used to make wine in his basement. It was Kaplan's wine. And one of my brothers, Rav Bruce's, Rav Chaim Spassman Zatzal, used to put the labels on the bottles. And he asked Rav Mendel, he said, Rav Mendel, I'm running on Mr. Mer Wasser, so we'll have a Mer Seira. Maybe we should put in more water. Rav Mendel tells them, no, wir tun nicht ein Ramoyen. I feel it with grapes. Even with grapes, you can't cheat. So one day, he's going downtown, Rav Mendel, to the big library, 60 years ago, whatever it was, to get books on making wine so he could bring back to yeshiva. So the Bachrim could look in the Sefer and tell him what's written there, how he can improve his wine. He's coming back on the bus to the bus stop on the west side. And lo and behold, my brother, Olam Basham, drives by, he sees the Rosh Yeshiva there. And he said, Rabbi, come to Rhein. So, I mean, he had all these foreign on wine and whatever. So, I mean, you're driving with a Rosh Yeshiva, you can't have dead air in the car, you have to talk. So my brother asked him, Vilchas foreign about the Rosh Yeshiva. So he didn't want to tell him that he had wine books or whatever. So he tells him, Ein is am Meiri. Und Ein is nicht am Meiri. That's how I answered him. And that was what he gave over to me. One more little, he says, when they were learning about Christ, that's all. He said, nobody was ready for that chair. Nobody nobody was lucky enough or easy enough to hold out, to keep the faith and to follow everything. So he says they were learning a Tosfos one time. And he tells me that a Bocher raised his hand when they were learning the Tosfos, and he asked, Kreiswitz Asal Charlotte, he said they were learning the Tosfos, they came to the abbreviation Kuf Kuf. Kuf Kuf normally stands for Sas Shoshet. There's stickle difficulty here. So the Bocher raised his hand, asked the Rav Kreiswitz, he asked him, Rabbi, from Vanna Basin has the Sas Shoshet, actually is kosher tzaz. How do you know it's Sas Shoshet? Maybe it's kosher tzaz. So my brother tells me, Rav Kreiswitz on the spot answered him, it was well given a kosher tzaz, but the zweite kuffe could be freer. The second kuffe would have come first. Kosher. These are little. These are the vignettes that my brother told me as a kid, but he was already a shtuck on the chacham in yeshiva, and I would love to hear these things. And you know I loved it. So he would tell me these over and over again. Every time he had a mice like that, he would tell it over to me. In addition to going over the parsha, chazing with me my homework, my Gemara, my Mishnayos. This was the life that we led as I was a little kid. And I miss that very much. He gave great comfort to my Zaydas, that's all. And he was sat next to him for the whole time. But my Zaydas said, Shiva for my Bobby, he was next to him, the ganze side, he didn't move. He sat next to him on Douglas Boulevard, on Independence Boulevard, he was there, the ganze side, he wouldn't go away from anything. He sat there and it was Mishamish, my grandfather. Panavishir Rav Zatzal would come to Chicago, would be an Asadia by my Zayda. And my Zayda Zatzal would call my brother, and my father to take him around to raise money. So they took him once, it was already winter time, I remember, and so they had to stop at Daven Mincha in the shul. So they stopped, they davened Mincha, and the Beis Medrash, and they finished davening, and the Panavishir Rav wanted to see the big shul. Can't understand in the tears so I can see the Beis Knesses. So my brother tells me that the sexton or the shamus, whoever it was, opened the door to the big shul, and the Panavishir Rav went in, and he asked the question, he said, who's this in the Bible? So he was apprised of the facts of life. He said, okay, it's Pashtay. He left the shul, went outside, and davened mincha again. I told the story to a few people here. They didn't believe me. They called my brother to verify, which he did. When I would go to sleep at night, my greatest tragedy and my greatest joy would be to crawl into his bed and hug him and sleep with him in his bed. And we'd wake up together and say, well, Dani. My father would drive him to the bus stop to go to college or to the yeshiva and take me to school, to the Hebrew Program School on Independence or the JPI in Douglas. And that was our lives. It was my budget. I mean, I could stand up there for a week and rehash everything that I did in my youth, my brother. But the time is short, I probably have to end already. I know the Gemara said, the Kibbe says that Ben Shmonim Nigura and Ben Shishin, Ben Tishin Neshuach. My brother may have been Angebeutel, he may have been stupid, but his mind did not stoop. His mind worked out of sight until he could no longer function.
what is it that for a parent, the Avelis is a year, but if someone was a child, the Avelis is only 30 days, how can that be? The parent goes before a son or before a child, that's a normal house, the parent dies before a son, before a child. But the child should die. That's connected to that. That's why is that Avelis only 30 days? So for the answer, you said the Avelis for a parent is not only for the Misa, it's for the fact that the son's connection to Ma'amad Har Sinai has been severed. There is no longer that connection. Which is how I go to bed. Thank you for your patience.
Of all his grandchildren, there's only one that gets to be first. One gets to be oldest. We'll see this one. That's all.
I have to say, just spent 6 hours in the car, and it's been, the floodgates of memories were just came forth, and those memories won't mean as much to you as they do to me, obviously. There's one part that I heard from my grandfather in the name of Remendel, which we didn't necessarily claim to live by, but certainly embodied. It says often when the Gemara quotes a discussion in referencing a different shakla v'tarya, the Gemara will use the words v'havinan ba. Quote a Mishnah, Brisa, a Memra, v'havinan ba, and we ask them. We ask them. The Gemara goes through, and then the Gemara will go through, the answer or whatever it is. But Remendel pointed out, the word v'havinan ba doesn't really mean, and we ask. V'havinan really means, and we were. And we were in it. Mendel said that when we discuss something that we, a shiloh that we had, a kasha that we had, a machshava that we had, we talk about it, b'havinan ba, we were in it. We were in it. We were completely enveloped. And it completely overtook our being, our essence. V'havinan ba. There's no picture in my mind that's, of v'havinan ba more than what we saw. Sitting by a Shabbos Suda, we could be sitting in a restaurant, we could be sitting wherever we might be. And we'd see that thoughtful look cross over my grandfather's face, and suddenly he was in another world. He was in it. He had a shaila, there was something, a question about the daf yomi that he learned that morning that he couldn't get off his mind. A question about the daf yomi that he learned last week or last month that he couldn't shake. A malbim, which was always his favorite one, whichever one it may have been. But it was the Havinanba. We were in it. He was in it. He completely immersed himself in whatever it was that he was doing. When he was learning, that's all that existed. And the truth is, I remember there was one time, some of us might be more familiar, but with his vacation home in Michigan City, which he very much enjoyed going to visit. And there was one Shabbos where we had come from Minneapolis. We had come to be here for Shabbos. My parents weren't home. We were staying by my in-laws. And my grandparents said, you know what? The Einiklach are here. The little people are here. We're going to stay and we're going to join them by my in-laws for the Shabbos Suda. And they did. I mean, my in-laws invited them, but they stayed for they stayed. Those of you who knew him understand what kind of a serious nefesh that was. And by the Suda, all he had to talk about was the return. He didn't talk about us, just the fact that we were there. That was enough for him. But all he had to talk about was a Torah and the Parsha, something that the Malbim had to say. And afterwards, my shver was floored, and he said, "How could it be that he's a working man, he's a lawyer, and all he has to talk about is the retirement. That's all that's on his mind." That's what it was. We were in it. He was in it. There was nothing else that mattered. The only thing that mattered to him was his learning and his little people. No matter how big they got, they were always his little people. And everything just took. If it had to do with his little people, it was of utmost importance to him. Whether it was a milestone like learning how to walk, or starting to learn Gemara, putting on tefillin. I'm sure my brothers and Ephraim will know that, will remember, you got to make sure you wrap your tefillin over the table, no matter what. It was one of his big fuss, but it was, but whatever it was, it had to be complete, had to be 100%. It was quite literally v'havinava. His learning and his einiklach, his children, his einiklach, his ur einiklach. That was it. That was the whole world to him. We're gonna miss it, which I say. We really will. One other thing, if I'm allowed to. Bobby, we're here for you. We're here for you. Stay strong and be here for us. Okay? We just had the high this past Shabbos of my son's bar mitzvah, your first Oranical. Hashem, there'll be many more bar mitzvahs, there'll be chasanas. We're here for you. We might be here for us. We don't know Shabbos Lanasa Tamacha Hashem Leitim Nibun Al Kafar.
Our final speaker, Mrs. Avrum Reifer.
I'm here today to say a few words about my Zadie. Specifically the following words: splendiferous, automatopoeia, idiosyncratic. Zadie was a man of many words. His extensive vocabulary was legendary. But the words that really mattered were the small words. The four-letter jumbles that he would do on a napkin, a slice of life. The little weird names he would make up for us. And of course, when he looked at us and said, my Shani Ingle, or Madel, or, yeah, very inclusive here. We just heard from everyone here about how incredible Zadie was when it came to his Torah, which, again, Malden, we got it, thank you. We did worse there. And of course, Avodas Hashem. That same passion, that same love that he had, he applied to his family, to his mishpacha. He had so much love for every single member of our family, and you better believe he made sure we knew it. From the daily Dunkin' Donuts runs, you'd come and drop it off in the morning. Sidebar, there was a famous line that he made that for the last 40 plus years, he has made the exact same order at the Dunkin' Donuts drive-thru. And yet somehow, he has never gotten the same thing on every trip. Of course, his aggressively promoted Michigan City Shabbos visits and the obligatory lighthouse walks. To introducing to us the TikTok before it was popular. However, this version of TikTok is him flipping us over on our heads and shaking us left to right. It's traumatic. Nothing else mattered to him in those moments. Like Steve mentioned earlier, he was in it. He was all in it. It was all that mattered. It didn't matter if he was in the middle of, trying to blow up some big real estate deal with his incessant and meticulous style. When he was with us, he was all in. He took his role in our lives so seriously, and he made sure to make the time to be there. He took pride in what he did. I think I mentioned earlier, being an attorney, he made sure every detail was accounted for. Every single deal had to be 100% miyusher. I was told I wasn't supposed to tell this story, but I just love it, so I'm going to say it anyways. This was my mother shared this last week. This is a couple of weeks ago. My mother was with him at the nursing home. Not ours, don't worry. And he started to come to a little bit. He was able to converse a little bit. And the words he said was, "Who's paying?" And my mother said, "Don't worry, Medicare is covering everything, 100%, you don't have to worry." He's like, just smiled. And that's how he was. He didn't want to be a burden on anybody else. He wanted to take care of everyone, whether it was on the real estate side, whether it was his family. All that mattered to him was that his chaver, his mishpacha was taken care of, the client was taken care of. He never really thought about himself. He taught us a lot, which was already as well, but it wasn't just teaching us Torah, it was the message and the confidence that he brought along with that. He taught, personally, he taught me, and I think all of my cousins as well, taught them our bar mitzvah parsha and how to lane. With so much confidence that when I was at a good old Bush Rogers Park at Kins, when I was laning and there was an argument about a word and how I pronounced it, I knew with 100% certainty that I was saying it the right way. Sideh, I don't yell Sadeh, I said Sideh. It didn't matter. I knew that if Zadie taught me Sideh, that was it. Much to the chagrin of the Gabbai there. Zadie was a legend of Chicago. And I think we've seen over the last couple of years, the last couple of years, so many pillars of the community that have unfortunately passed on. Zadie was one of those pillars. This isn't just a loss. This isn't just a loss for our family. This is a loss for our community. And of course, anyone who needs a real estate attorney that still accepts faxes only for communication. We're all going to miss you, Zadie. We love you. We're lucky to have had you in our lives. No family gathering will be the same without your words and presence, but we will make you proud as you watch us from your place in Shemayim. I have to second Zvi on supporting Bubby, and that could include also giving her a drink if my mom's not watching. Zadie, please be a male Yashar for our family and all Klal Yisrael. We have Muslim Netzach Malchai Shem Lakim Yimad Me'al.
Am Seibnu Chon Choyno Al Kanfei Ashchino B'ma'alois Kedoshim U'torim Sh'zayore Ki Amazirim Es Nishmas Avrum Ben Tzvi Sholach Loi Lomoi Bavur Shanachnu Mispalevim B'yadas Korach Nishmosoi V'ganei Dentei Menuchosoi Lochem Balo Rachamim Yastireu V'seiser Kinofov Loilamim Yitzor B'tzor HaChayim Es Nishmosoi Adonai Unachalosoi Yoduach V'shaloi Mal Mishkavoi V'noi Maromei
This includes Lavaya Shul. The Kfur will be on Walnut Cemetery. For those who will be going to the cemetery, we're lining up in California, facing south. At the conclusion of the Kfur, the family is going to show that the Reifer resident, 1617 North Francisco.